Remy, do your thing.
So buenas tardes, good afternoon. So I'm gonna start everything out with a check-in. So like I want to introduce myself. My name is Professor Remysell Salas. I am a professor at the City University of New York in the Department of Ethnic and Race Studies at BMCC. And today's book is going to be the Dominican Republic, A National History by Frank Moya Pons. And the reason why I selected this book is because I wanted to make sure that we know the timeline and how the formation of the Dominican Republic was formed. It's very important because the Dominican Republic has a very, very unique story, which kind of something that we still in search of today within everyone that's from Dominican ancestry, descendants, and they want to be able to have a better understanding. So the Dominican Republic is just a follow-up from the Black Jacobins. So as a checking, you could just say your name and just say, what is your favorite, even if you didn't read the book completely, what is your favorite time period in the Dominican Republic? Or you could say your favorite historical character. And I will start with, I love the second revolution, the second occupation. And my favorite historical character figure is Professor Juan Bosch. And I will kick it off to Alexander Vogel. Go ahead.
Hello, yeah, Vogel, it's fine, or Vogel, either is fine. Again, thank you to both Dominican writers and Professor Salas for hosting this. As far as favorite, I guess for me, how I'm thinking about the Dominican Republic, because I'm not Dominican myself, but I'm thinking about it in what I study, which is the Atlantic world, transatlantic slavery. And for me, it's trying to make sense of the slave experience in Dominican Republic, because it's not as large scale as something like Saint-Domingue or what would become Haiti, South US, and a lot of other parts of Latin America, especially Cuba. But so for me, the 19th century, of course, is an area that I look into anyways. So especially as the Dominican Republic is trying to also make sense of itself, trying to state build. That's one element. And then the second half, which unfortunately I didn't get into with this book, but in other readings, is what was called the Banana Wars, which is the period of military occupation from the United States. So those would be the time periods.
If anybody, I know that some folks don't want to be on camera. If you want to just introduce yourself, you can. If you want to put it on the chat, even better, just to make sure. I see Jasmine. Yes. So Jasmine indicated her favorite time period is in the 18th and 19th century. Great. So I know that time is limited. So I'm gonna just get into it because I want to make sure that we grasp all the information. So I'll just get started from there. So like I said, my name is Professor Remysell Salas. You can always call me Remy. And this book is by Frank Moya Pons. Many people know who this man is because a lot of people have read this book for any academic courses they took probably at CUNY or any Dominican courses at the university level or high school level. So my Dominican phrase of the day. And if anybody wants to take a shot, you guys can raise your hand or write stack on the chat. So my Dominican phrase of the day, this is something I used to hear my grandmother say, is La piña está agria. What do you think that means?
Professor Remy?
Yes. Oh, he said, is that Abe?
Oh. Yeah, that wasn't me that was speaking. But
it means times are tough.
Yes. So times is tough. That's mainly what it means. Anybody else? Okay, the situation is difficult, no bueno. Yes. So it's funny that I'm not gonna put her name out there, but
I was the only one that didn't know what that meant. That's what it is. Say it.
No, Angie, I
didn't know what it was, so it's okay.
I'm with you guys. I'm over here like, damn, pulling my card.
He asked me that, and I said, does that mean that someone said something to you that you didn't appreciate? Or that felt sour to you, right?
Yeah.
I was taking it so literal. I'm like, I don't know, pineapples. They're tasty, that's all I know.
Yo no soy la única.
So this is a phrase that my grandmother used to say, and I used to tell, ponle azúcar. Doña Prieta. If you could put azúcar, we can get better times. So it's a phrase that they say in the southern portion of the Dominican Republic, which is Jaina. And I just wanted to share that with you guys. So we'll get started with the overview. So this book is a study of the history of the Dominican Republic from the pre-colonial and the colonial periods to the present period. It deals with the geographical, political, social, and economic factors from the Dominican nation. This emphasis is given to the relations with Haiti and the United States. The course also analyzes the position of the Dominican Republic in the community of Latin American nations, as well as its place in today's world. All right, so as the more that we get into the present day, you'll see how connected they are to other nations. When you know that in the Restoration War, they're very connected with Cuba and Puerto Rico. And in different time periods, you see the connection with different West Indian nations. So the historical evolution of the Dominican Republic to the present day, we're going to be speaking about the racial, ethnic, and identity issues. This book also talks about the cultural development and expressions, the development of political process, ideas, parties, political parties, and leaders, and economic development and internal industries and international and foreign relations. As well as when they get into the 60s, you'll touch upon the outward and the outward migration and the return migration, okay? Which that kind of touches on many people in this call, because many of us might have came in the 60s, 70s, 80s, even the 90s. And sometimes if you hear anybody that comes to this country, they say, as soon as I retire, I'm going back. And we're one of the few immigrant groups that don't, you know, even though we probably end up staying anyway, we always have a plan to go back. So that's the overview. Does anybody have any questions before I get into anything deeper? No? We got a lot of shy people here today. Okay. All right. What do you guys know about the Dominican Republic before we get started? Vamos a hablar. Does everybody speak Spanish, by the way? A little bit? So does anybody want to try to mention anything? Or what do you guys know about the Dominican Republic? And this can go into any dimension. When you think about the Dominican Republic, what do you think about?
Dembo.
Dembo? Me too. Me too. Who said that?
Angie.
Angie? That sounds like Angie. Let me see.
The flag.
Merengue, los mangú, yes, bachata, business, exporting business. My man, Manny is ready. He's ready to get this money.
A lot of tourism.
Tourism is a major thing. But what do you when you think about the Dominican people, what do you think? Think about. No?
Confianza.
I just get awkward.
Awkward? Okay.
Yeah, no, I it's because I'm bad with the culture, so I'm like, you know, every time when I'm around people, I'm like, I'm sorry in advance. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. So
We are confianzu.
Excuse me?
Confianzu.
Eso quiere decir que
Cogemos mucha confianza con la gente. We have no boundaries when it comes to personal space, or you know what that means.
Yes.
it means you get in trouble. It means you get in trouble at work sometimes.
Yeah. No,
Ya a uno sin conocer.
Yeah. When you find another Dominican, that's it. Forget it. There's no time period like let's be friends. Like you already friends because you're Dominican.
I think that's how we met, Angie. That's how we met.
Yeah.
And that was basically you.
Yes, yes.
I love that in the chat we have a lot of joyful, funny people, and I love that you guys are all mentioning this charming and entrepreneur spirits. So there's a reason why it's important to know the entrepreneur spirit is because we're going to talk about the 100 years of misery. All right. So when the colonial period happens, the Spaniards go elsewhere, and the Dominican criollos are for themselves and figure out how are they going to be able to make money and build their wealth. So a lot of good things. I love that you guys have mentioned so many great things: respectful, hardworking, no boundaries. Yes, optimistic. So very good people. So I love your responses. Any last words before I get started? No? Okay. So starting into the first chapter. And in the first chapter, in the Dominican Republic book, they go right into it with the pre-colonial period, where they speak about the geography and the Aboriginal population, which are the Tainos, and you also speak about the Caribs as well. Okay. One of the things is that the Tainos people were among the indigenous people of the Caribbean and in Florida. A lot of them, before European contact, they populated Cuba, Jamaica, Haiti, the Dominican Republic, and Puerto Rico, and they often they originate from the northern part of Latin America, which is modern day Venezuela. During those 3,000 years of migration, they spread out to other lands and created different civilizations. Okay, they brought many seeds. They brought a lot of their culture, plants, and a lot of different lifestyles. Since I didn't want to just yap away, what are some things that you guys picked up from the book about the Taino people?
I did have a question upon reading it, and that is the question of the extinction of the indigenous. Were they, extinct, or were they not?
So that's an awesome question, but so the Taino people, they were all over the Caribbean and Latin America. A lot of Dominicans, is known that a lot of Dominicans have that in their blood. So they still live through us. So I know when I just did my DNA, I still have a high concentration of Taino ancestry. But the culture was very much diminished when the European contact came in. You have to think about how intense when the Spanish came in. They were with the Dominicans, as well as some of their culture. But a lot of things in their culture still lives on with us today, and some of it we still use some of their languages. El Cibao is the word that they use for the northern part of the Dominican Republic, which a lot of people are from the Cibao. So it's they live through us. So I wouldn't just say extinct, but there's a lot of words that we still use about them. So what are things that you guys read in the book that you learned about the Tainos before I yap away?
The word maíz was from them.
The word maíz. There's a lot of different words. Yuca, Cibao. Anybody else?
Mani. I don't think mani was in the book, but
no, it was.
Oh, was it? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I learned the Taino culture, and it's not extinct, but we still have a lot of it in so much of what we do, and in so many ways, and the language, especially, definitely the way that we eat. And for Christmas when we roast a pig, that putting the pig in the big stick and then putting it around the fire, that comes from like, that's just one of many examples of how their culture still lives with us. Yep. And within us. And then remember, guys, that Enriquillo, which I think the book covers, Enriquillo had a huge group of Taino people who he won against the Spanish, and they let him live with his Taino people. I think they went somewhere in Monte Plata. Yep. So they're within us, but I think that the topic of them being extinct kind of it became bigger with how some, unfortunately, especially with the Trujillo era, it was that identity was used to mask our Black heritage. And so I think one in trying to, build that up and protect that, it kind of went the other way. And also people think there's a lot of researchers that wonder if Las Casas, when he was given reports of the numbers of Tainos going down, if it was accurate because he was trying to protect them. So there's some researchers that say that those numbers might have been skewed to emphasize the urgency of the Tainos dying out. But just, so there's a lot that we learned through the book. And
That you covered a lot of the a lot of things that I wanted to mention in terms of how Bartolo de las Casas, that's going to be the next chapter, chapter 2. But it's Enriquillo, and there's a lot of important figures from the Taino era, like Anacaona, that is still mentioned, and I think that it's something that that lives still through us. And many people may talk about life before the Europeans came to any country or any civilization. They speak about them like they didn't have a culture, they didn't have they weren't organized, but the Taino people were very, very organized. They even had a social structure, they had a political system throughout the just speaking in the whole island, Hawaii, Quisqueya, they had a whole entire island, and they knew where people will stay, and it was just so organized. I think it's unfortunate that we never got to see it develop, because I think the Dominican Republic would be a whole different island. But there's a lot of their culture lives through us, and then we're gonna talk about why, because Enriquillo, who is Enriquillo? Because he is such an important figure. You still see his statues everywhere if you go to Santo Domingo. Who is Enriquillo? I know Gary knows. They had like a.
Wasn't he a cacique?
He was a cacique, yes.
So I actually have some questions regarding Enriquillo and where perhaps you stand on the idea that, because even the name Enriquillo is a very Spanish name. So there are theories that he was in fact Guarapuya, who was the nephew of Anacaona. And Enriquillo is known for leading rebellions in the south. So he's a very interesting character, and I'm just wondering where you stand on the whole identity Guaracuya Enriquillo.
I didn't hear the last part that you mentioned, but
I was just wondering where you stand on the idea of Enriquillo being the slave name, or the what was it, a Catholic name of Guaracuya.
I have never really thought about it too much. I've read certain articles about it, but I could see that being something that the Spanish definitely have put their own names on stuff. I have never taken a stand or an opinion on that part, but it's something I would need to research, and this is way past the book as well. So, but that's an interesting question. Maybe I could.
Definitely past the book, but because of it, I just had that question. But thank you.
Yeah,
I'm with you, Kayla. I think it was, a Catholic name assigned to him.
I can see that.
And they just removed his Aboriginal name, like they always do. They gentrified his name. There you go.
There we go.
Colonized.
So just to speak more about their culture, the culture. So they had a very sophisticated social structure. All right. So we're gonna talk about the caciques, where they were the kings, they were the people on the top, the chief. And when I want to compare it to the European social structure, you have the royals on the top, and you have the middle class, and you have the working class. They also had something like that, and you have the cacique, you have the Tainos that were beneath, that were under the Taino leaders. That many of them were the ones that were expanding out to become their own caciques later on. All right. And then you also have the working class folks, where the Naboris. The Naboris were a group of men and women who perform manual labor. Um, that perform manual labor. And you also had advisors. You had an advisor in terms of, this is not a big group, but like a Vahike. And Vahike were men that were like the shaman. They were like the medicine man of the village. They used the herbs. So they were like the doctor, but they also served as the advisor to Cacique. So they had a very, very sophisticated structure. I think that sometimes it's lost in translation of, when you think about what the Europeans came in and just changed the world, they actually had a very sophisticated thing. Just like when you think about the Mayas, you think about the Mayans, and you think about the Aztecs, there was a lot of major cultural sophisticated civilizations in these time periods. So sometimes it makes me think, what if they didn't have European contact, what would have been developed in the Dominican Republic? And that's something when we thinking about further, just like Jadira mentioned, just think about further of what if that never happened, European contact. And I noticed that many people put in different words that we still use from the Taino culture, like El Conoco. Of course, we got Yuca, we have cassava. It's still used in our everyday. If you go to a Dominican bodega, you still see we still buy cassava. And it's something that it came from the Taino people. So they also had very political, very sophisticated political organization where they broke up into 5 different groups. And people that read in the book, what are these 5 organizations? And what do you guys think about it? You guys know how they were broken into.
Do you mean the different regions, or you mean within the society, the different like levels, hierarchies within the community?
So they had different regions, and they also had different hierarchies in these different tribes. They're very difficult to pronounce. Somebody just emailed me.
Are you talking about the different caciques that headed them?
So in every portion of so I'm talking about the 5 different political groups that the Tainos had in the island of Haiti and Quisqueya.
Are you talking about the Guarianex, that stuff? Guarianex, Caonabo. Conabo, yeah. Whoever can do this, finish, because I can't.
You mean the regions, the cacicascos, like Marién, Higüey, Aragua?
It's on page,
the leaders.
It's on page 22, guys. The last paragraph.
De Chio, Guacanagaris, y Cayacoa.
Cayacoa, yeah.
Yep. So there was a reason why they were all broken into different regions. So I just want you to think about that. So it's like different boroughs. They had a very, I'm just always, that's one of the pages that really stuck out to me before I even learned anything about the Taino culture, is that how sophisticated they were and how together they worked. They worked, all the different caciques worked hand in hand together to make sure that they can elevate their tribes. And this is all before European contact. And I just wanted to highlight that because, you had a lot of different important figures that rose from that time, as well as many of their cultures. So before we go into the next few chapters, I just wanted to just highlight how parts of their culture that still lives on into us. I see people, and many of them were united against the Caribs. Who were the Caribs?
They were another group of indigenous peoples in the Caribbean.
And thought to be cannibals.
Yeah, so that's what some researchers say. about them, and this is why Caribs, you know, just to scare off many people that are coming into this side of the world, they named it the Caribbean because, you know, they felt that certain people will end up in a wrong island and they will be eaten up. So, but there was just so much going on in this side of the world. And when people say that Christopher Columbus discovered this side, it's always problematic to me and many people, many scholars. They mentioned that's very problematic because there's just so much things going on here, and it always makes me wonder how everything would have developed. So I want to get into the connection and European contact. So when the Spanish Empire arrived to this side of the world, they arrived to La Navidad, which is December 24th, 1492. And there were so many things in play. So the stipulation of Santa Fe was a major turning point into making this happen. What is the stipulation of Santa Fe? Since we're doing a book review. ¿Quién leyó?
Pero fue hace mucho tiempo. I don't remember a thing. Oh.
So just to put it into, just to point out, the stipulation of Santa Fe is the agreement, it's the first contract of the New World. That's how they put it. The first contract of the New World. So it's the agreement to finance this voyage between Colón, Christopher Columbus, and the Royals in Spain. And it basically detailed, and they got many working class people from Spain to come in and bring back wealth. And one of the main things in the contract is that they will bring in 80% of the resources back to Spain, and they were promised titles. They were promised land, because back in Spain, if you were born poor, it's not that you're gonna go to college and you're gonna make your family proud, and now you're gonna become the greatest doctor and become rich. It's you will go to the New World and seek a new life for your family. And one of the main things that did is they went on this voyage, and titles were very, very important to these folks. So many of them were promised to be, governors, supervisors, businessmen. And this is how you were able to get a bunch of men and women to come into the New World. Does anybody have any questions before I go into run everything down? I want this to be collaborative. I want to be como que in my class lecturing. Dictator.
A question about the stipulation of Santa Fe.
Yes, sir.
Was that an agreement between whom? Was that sort of a declaration from the Spanish Empire in terms of the structure by which these people would travel there, or was this a negotiation with other entities? Thanks.
So it's to finance the voyage. So the boats, everything that they need to come into the side of the world. It was very, very expensive. It was mentioned that Colón, Christopher Columbus, he was trying to have he proposed this idea to many, many different places, and the Spanish Empire is the one that decided to go with this idea, and he promised to extract at least 80% of the resources, mainly gold, to back to Spain, and as well as keeping loyalty to the Spanish crown. Okay, so this whole idea, this is the reason why I always mention the Dominican Republic is so important. I'm not saying that because I'm not trying to be biased because I'm Dominican. No, it's because this is the first. This is like the blueprint. You come in, you set up shop, and you extract the resources, but also build outside of that country, of that nation, that empire, and that empire was expanding. So at this time, even though it doesn't really mention in the book how the Spanish and the Portuguese made a deal, in terms of that's why Brazil was so big, because the Portuguese was going to have this side, was going to have Brazil, and the Spanish will have everything above. All right, this is like their hustle. You know, this was what made. This is before the slave trade. So wealth was the main motivator, and they saw that Taino people led them to where the resources were. Leading to that, it led to genocide. It led to greed, and that's how many Tainos Taino people were, you know, almost extinct. Why was it so easy for the Spanish to just come in to the island and just take over? Why was it so easy?
Disease, because they were.
Disease is one of them.
Because can you hear me okay? Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, because well, first it was the first, you know, so they weren't as prepared for these foreigners that are coming in, and the Tainos were, in Christopher Columbus's own words, generally peaceful. They were open and generous, and so it was easy for them to take advantage of that. And it's also an island, like where, like at least in South America, you can just keep running south, keep running up the mountains. But how far can you keep running on an island? So I think that hit them the hardest. Yeah.
Well, just to try and imagine, many, just like Jasmine indicated, many of the Taino people thought they were good people. Just imagine you're a Taino, right? You're hanging out, you're eating fish, you're having the best time, the weather's nice, and out of nowhere you see these guys coming out of, you've never seen a boat. So first of all, you're gonna be like, wow, this is big. You've never seen a horse. A guy comes out.
I probably saw boats though, like.
Nah, I mean little, because they were traveling, but I'm talking about massive boats.
No, but I mean, because there was trade between the Caribbean, between Central America, North America. Yeah. They could have had like big ass boats. They just might not have had the horse or like the dudes that don't bathe coming off of it. But
I mean, well, it was just documented that it was canoes, and there was like, but big boats. This is like big boats where people had horses. They had. It was just massive. Just to see something that big, it's like seeing, we don't know what the future holds. Let's make believe.
It was like Noah's Ark?
Yeah, it's like it's massive boats, but also you never seen a white person. So now this white person comes out the boat, the ship, with a horse. You're like, wow, who is this person? They have clothing that were different colors. They, you know, it's something new, and they welcomed them. With open arms. They saw how great they were open. They were giving up gold like it was nothing, because gold didn't really mean anything to them. It was just all around it was all around the island. So, you know, they were caught off guard, many of them. Yeah, so I see the chat is booming. So yeah, we definitely are. So and it was nice until you know, they saw what was the real reason they came there for, and then things just kind of went the opposite side. So as well as making contact with a person from a different region of the world at this time, diseases, technological advances played a big part. You know, they had weapons that they'd never seen before. You know, it's like, I always like to give analogies to my students. It's like, you never seen a guy on a horse. This guy has a big sword. They have guns. You like, hey, this guy is not playing around. Like, even though you can probably tweet 20 of you guys and take on one of them, nobody's gonna really try it. It's like seeing UFOs, like Abe indicated. So, and they said, hey, maybe they always thought that they would be gone, but the population already started diminishing before they started bringing African slaves. So, before we get into the Atlantic slave trade Does anybody have any questions in terms of more of like the Taino people, the gold, the genocide, the encomiendas, and what caused the Spanish to the Spaniards to flee the Dominican Republic?
I have two things. The first, I want to make a question, but before that, I have a bigger question. The bigger question is, I didn't really understand the encomienda stuff very much, but so I was hoping there could be like a bit of a deeper overview on that. But also, is there like, I know there's a lot of narrative like the conquistadors being like, oh, and also
breaking up.
did I freeze?
Yeah, you sounded like
okay, no. Okay. So yeah, help with understanding the encomienda system, but also I was wondering if there really was like a record of people of like the Tainos actually being like, oh, these people are like gods or whatever, because I've heard that that's just a narrative that the Spanish put out to kind of big themselves up. But I mean, again, kind of going back to like trade and stuff, it's not like we didn't know of other people with other impressive weapons, like the stuff that the Aztecs had could chop off a horse's head in one blow. I've heard that African people were exploring in the Americas too, so they probably did see ships. Like I'm sorry to be on the ship thing again, but so is there anything that says that like yes, they were actually like, dang, these guys are really impressive, or is that just a rumored / myth kind of a thing?
You know, I do admire how you see things, because I do question everything as well. I'm one of those people too. So, am I breaking up as well? Allow me? Okay. So I do admire how you see things, because I do my own diligence, because remember, everybody that writes something is their perspective, and you don't know who they're trying to impress at that time. So, I mean, in the book, it indicates that. It indicates how they they looked at them as gods and things of that nature, and how it made it easy for them. But remember, the Taino people were warriors as well. They were fighters. They had a lot of combat. You know, they had their battles with the Caribs and things of that nature. But they kind of welcomed the Spaniards. You know, it wasn't, as soon as they got off the big ship, it was on a, you know, it was not just fighting. It took some time, and they thought that, you know, they were bonding with these new type of people. They looked at them as almost gods, something different. UFOs. Just think about, if you see UFOs today, what's the first thing you're gonna do? I know me, I'm gonna run, because I don't know what to expect. But most people are gonna go in there probably with their iPhone, trying to put it on Instagram, taking a selfie, and you don't know what these aliens might want to do to you, you know. But it took some time. And the Taino people, they saw what was happening. They were dying out. They were with the encomienda system and mining. They wanted to reduce anything happening to their children, so they had mass suicides. And this is where the Spaniards started looking at other avenues in terms of who can we bring into the island. What's gonna happen next? Because when greed was so heavy in this time, that it that it kind of fueled what was happening in this side of the world. Okay. Yes. So I'm just reading the comments. So after the diminishing, the elimination, not elimination, but the diminishing of the Taino people, because many of them had children with many of the Europeans, many of them reproduced, many of them, you know, you still have in the more western side in Tortuga Island, where we're gonna get into very, very soon. Tortuga Island is a little island in the Dominican Republic, more in Haiti. where a lot of them, there was a lot of Tainos there, where you still see a small population, and with time they mixed with Africans and other and Criollos. So I just before we go into the Spanish rule, I just want people to understand that, I wouldn't say that they completely extinct because they lived through us. I'm big on understanding of what our past is and what's our mixture. So just understand a lot of big parts of the Dominican culture. We still see them throughout the Dominican Republic.
I read a thing. Sorry, I felt like saying real quick. I read a thing once that was saying how a lot of the indigenous DNA that we have comes from our what's the word? Like our mom's side. It comes from like the mother DNA path, and kind of is like serves as evidence for the amount of rape that happened. Maternal, thank you.
Yeah.
For the amount of rape that happened like on the island after the Spanish arrived. Mitochondrial DNA. I was gonna say mitochondrial DNA, but I didn't want to be a nerd.
It's okay. Many things with DNA comes from the mother's side. It's just the strongest thing that you can, but it's something that's there. But just going back to the timeline, I know that we're stretched with time, and it's already 7:47. Still on chapter 2. I wanted to speak in terms of, and I know Jerry said it earlier, that who is Bartolome de las Casas? And what is he memorable for? I mean, in the book, his name is all over.
He was a friar, a Dominican friar, and he's known because he made the suggestion directly to the Spanish crown in attempts to sort of save the remaining Indian population there to use Africans instead for the labor purposes. And so he sort of opens the way for the Atlantic slave trade to begin.
Yes. Even though I think about the rationale in terms of trying to save one people and do the same thing to another set of people, kind of not a strong enough rationale.
Exactly. And I think it's also worth noting, not giving the brother any props or anything, but he did like recant later. He like apologized. He was like, this was wrong. I see the light now. But, that was after you bombard a whole new group of people into this barbaric practice.
Yep.
I think he's complex. I think that there's a lot he contributed. Obviously, that was atrocious, what happened. But he also was one of the only defenders that we've had of the Taino people on record. And the reason why we have so much information on the Tainos now is because he dedicated a lot of his esfuerzos to recording their history, to like a lot of what we have is just, but that's why we hear his name all the time, is because he was like, that's the only source of writing that we have. I think, he did something terrible. También ayudó a los Tainos. Es complicado, en mi opinión.
She says a shitty path. Yeah, I mean, I do agree with that. He did something good in terms of the history with but he opened up the gates in terms of what we see with the African diaspora. And,
do you think that it would have happened regardless of Las Casas? Because Portugal was already a horrible culprit of that. I'm sure, Mr. Alexander, since you studied it, maybe you can, maybe what if Casas never existed? Would we have had it anyway? Were we already on that route?
Well, I mean, those questions are difficult because they didn't happen, right? Hindsight is very easy to get into all this level of speculation. But what I do imagine is that at least Brazil would have continued to have been the largest importer of enslaved Africans as it had been, because Brazil holds slavery up until 1888, which is pretty long. It's longer than the United States and even Cuba. I don't know, because again, we know what happened, and I think it would be safe to say that Brazil would have continued being the kind of slave society that it was developing at this time, even though it's not really till 1500 that Portugal enters Brazil. I mean, what I will say though is that De las Casas is an early problematizer of slavery that doesn't resolve slavery. And so I think if there's anything important about De las Casas, apart from documenting a kind of doing an early ethnology of the indigenous population, it's a intellectual intervention in problematizing slavery. And I think that's something to that's worthwhile insofar as making sense of how slavery would then later be problematized. So for me, that's how I think about De las Casas, as opposed to whether he didn't exist or not.
Anybody else? When we say that he was a Dominican friar, let's remember that this is talking about within the religion, he was part of the Dominican conglomerate of Catholic people.
It's the name of the order.
Exactly, the order, thank you. So he was of the Dominican order. And I know that this is looking at the book and what has already happened, but we can see how religion has brought colonialism into Dominican Republic. Like, look at the name that we embraced. And to the point that, yes, we do have a lot of records that we do have thanks to him, but at the same time, he did see Tainos as pets in a sense, and his objective was to eradicate their culture, which is something that the Spanish succeeded in, quote unquote, in the sense of eradicating the community. He wanted to, quote unquote, save their souls. So trying to accomplish this meant they had to give up their way of life. So yes, I will save you, but only if you take up my way of life.
I love that. Who said that?
Kayla, hi, nice to meet you.
Hi, nice to meet you. She's, I love that. I mean, even though it is true that Brazil, the Portuguese, was already bringing in African people, because there was already slavery in the other side of the world, and slavery has been happening for since the beginning, almost the beginning of time, because even the word slave, it derives from Eastern Europe, the word. And then you also see slavery throughout Northern Africa and in different parts of the world. But to take a set of people and bring them to this side of the world, and this is where I'm big in terms of the African diaspora. I just came back from Africa in Ethiopia and Togo, and I just, it's not that difficult to understand that Dominican people, we have a direct connection to Africa, and it's nothing that we should be ashamed about. I know that even when I was putting posts in my Instagram about when I was in Ethiopia, people in Dominican Republic, hey, ¿qué tú haces aquí? No me llamaste, how you doing? How you come to the Dominican Republic? You don't even call me up, And I'm like, I'm in Africa, and they thought I was not. So, it's like Senegal. It's you see that, and so that's why I just wanted to make sure that before we start, speaking about the the import of slaves, I just it's always good. It's always good to I always tell my students to imagine yourself at this time, and don't ever I have cousins that I don't think they're not very proud of their African ancestry. And I was like, hey, you got to understand this is part of who you are. And in the Dominican Republic, we are somebody put un sancocho. We are like a sancocho, and I think that's what makes us a great group of people. And this is like the formation. So we already spoke about the Taino people. We got the Spanish in the country now, in the island, and now they're going to import slaves. And when you think about where did they get, what countries did they import the most slaves from? I know in the book they mentioned a few countries, but I want to hear from people I want to hear from people here. Yeah, El Congo is very, very big. What other parts?
Guinea? I'm just guessing.
Yeah, no, Guinea-Bissau, Senegal, Gambia, Cameroon.
I have a question.
Nigeria. Yeah, go ahead.
The how do I put this? Do you think the motivation for specifically using African slaves had anything to do with Spain having sort of recently been um freed, quote unquote, from Moorish rule? I say freed because I don't know too much on that history.
Come from somebody.
Huh?
I knew that was gonna come from somebody.
It had. I'm sorry.
I mean, even though it's not in the book, but
yeah, it's why I didn't know to what extent you might have known that because
no, it's something I always look at. I mean, what do others think? I don't want to get off the topic of the book, but that I love that question. What do others think? Do you think that the Spanish had like a they were against more of West African or African slaves because of the 400 rule under the Moors? Or that's speculation.
I would think that would have played a part in it because, kind of going back on the bit with like the saving souls and all this, they knew, a lot of people in North Africa, they're Muslim. And then the different people, I don't know how far down they interact with other groups, but I would think that they knew, oh, these people aren't our religion. And then they had that huge beef for like however long it was, where there was like the Northern Catholics and Christians versus the Southern, the Islamic people or like the Islamic religion and stuff like that. Little side tidbit, they did this whole thing with bathing when they were kicking out the Moors, and they like, I guess in the north they didn't bathe at all, and it was like a thing, and they were like, oh, bathing is bad, and then they came over and they stank, and then they brought their diseases, which sucks.
I know that, and it's outside of the book, so I'm not gonna stay too much on that, but I know Abe wants to say something, but I think that I mean, I do feel a little bit about that, and some of our last names may have some, correlations to, Islam and, different religion, different groups. But it's I agree with you. I mean, the way I'm doing more research on that, but I'm not gonna just stand by it. Abe.
Yeah, just thinking out loud. I don't know a great deal about this, like, but I think I do understand. Like, someone was explaining to me, a friend of mine who studied kind of like Puerto Rico's history, about how some of these people coming from Spain were of Moorish descent themselves. So I don't know if that means that people weren't targeted based on, I guess, like their race or their skin color. Like, I think that's a possibility, maybe somehow, whether consciously or subconsciously, right? Like the animosity between those groups could lead to that. But I think like when you just kind of look at slavery overall, and then like particularly like the transatlantic slave trade, to me, I think it's like race is kind of like created to uphold the slave trade. It's not like that's not the purpose of the slave trade. It's not that they're targeting these people because of their skin color, but more so they need labor, they need free, cheap labor. And so now we have to create a justification to treat these people worse than other people. And so now we're going to say they're inferior in X, Y, and Z way. And then those things get repeated over and over until they become kind of like codified in the society and in the culture and in the laws.
Yeah, no, and hey, everything you guys mentioned, it's something that it's been stated, and I think it's remarkable that that we are all enlightened to see that. But also you have to look at, they're trying to make money. They're trying, the the greed was really the main focus, and people knew that in Africa they had African slaves were a lot stronger. They would hold working outside a lot longer than a lot of groups. They were physically stronger. I always thought when people talk about Africans being inferior than the others, I just thought it was like ridiculous, because even if you put a level playing field, you see the big difference. You see in sports, you see it everywhere. But
even the climate, the fact that they were more accustomed to our climate could have been a factor as well. But going back to what Abe was saying, it was a narrative that was created kind of to, and it was perpetuated. I'm going to go hard on the Catholic Church again. But the idea of like, these were all good Christians, so they had to have an excuse to be able to take freedom away from people, to take land away from people. So there was this idea of, well, they must be inferior, and we are bringing our culture, bringing our knowledge, bringing ourselves, which are obviously superior, and that is why they should take on our characteristics. So it was, it's not isolated. It was an ongoing narrative that definitely the Catholic Church was protecting against, and that then served a function at this point, in my opinion, right?
No, and it's I respect everybody's opinion, and it's something that's been mentioned before. But I'm trying to stay, today is a book review, and we're gonna stay towards, we're gonna stay on the book. We can probably discuss that later on. I just want to get through the independence, and then we're gonna get into questions and all that. But I just wanted to, I put like bullet points because I felt in the last one I was able to speak through it. So just wanted to just give you, just some early stuff about early stages of the Spanish rule. They imported slaves from West Africa, different parts. Main reason is because they spoke different languages. They looked at each other differently, different tribes. So then they don't can't come together. Even though in the Dominican Republic, people don't talk about it too much. There was a lot of cimarrones that were able to escape and create their own little towns, which we still see in the Dominican Republic. We're going to discuss that, I think, in the next slide. And remember, sugar became a big industry in the Dominican Republic, which still today is really big in the Dominican Republic. I know we're almost running out of time. I want to get into like the formation. Why is the island divided? All right. So I always call it more colonies, more problems. All right. Since we're talking about money. All right. And one of the main things when the Spanish came in our chapter, and I believe it's like chapter 3 and 4, where you start seeing the battles of Tortuga Island. I mentioned that in the last book because it correlates in the last book with the Black Jacobins, because the little island of Tortuga Island was a major turning point into the island, okay? And people always wonder, why was this country split? All right, and it's because of so many battles between the Spanish and different European powers, all right? So I always make an analogy is that you can never be making money. If you're making money and people see that you're making money, because the island of the Dominican Republic and the western part of the Dominican Republic, which it was Santo Domingo before Saint Domingue, this colony was really producing a lot of money, and people started seeing all over the world, all right? And even though there were so many islands, you can never be making money anywhere. Everybody wants to be in Spanish we'll say lambón. They want to get what you're getting, all right? They can go to any block where they want to get on your block. So they went to Tortuga Island, which was on the western side and the northern part. It looked like a turtle shell. And there was a lot of different pirates from different countries, from the British, you have Dutch, and you have the French. So when the French and the English, they started building in the Tortuga Island, the Spanish noticed how close they were into the island of Santo Domingo. There were so many different battles for over 20 years. they fought for this little island just to get so close and be able to bring resources back. Okay, so after after endless battles between the Spanish and the French in Europe there and in the Americas, a number of battles, a number of treaties were implemented to change the course of the island. And one of the treaties that changed the course at the beginning of it was the Treaty of Resnick. All right, it was signed by the French and the Spanish monarchs to formally recognize the French colony as Saint Dominique. Right, this also implemented borders to prevent conflicts between the Spanish and the French. All right, making it making it the island of two nations. Right, this led to what we know today as Haiti and the Dominican Republic. All right, and since you barely see islands that are just split into two different countries like that, it just changed the course of history. Until today, we still have conflicts. So this one treaty changed everything. All right, and from there you start seeing Saint Dominique becoming the biggest producer of sugar. It was just, they started importing more African slaves. And at this time, remember the Spanish, they saw other opportunities. Okay, they went to different parts. They went to Mexico, Peru, there was so much gold. Puerto Rico, which is called rich port for a reason, and Cuba, and the Dominican people, the criollos. This is what they call them in the Spaniards that were born in the island. They already started developing. After 100 years, you become different. You start speaking differently. You start mixing with the natives. You just become your own different ethnicity. All right. And these during this time in the eastern side, Santo Domingo started shaping into a different just started going into their own. They just started taking their own course in history. Okay. And then the western side started developing into a powerhouse. But it was a lot of, if anybody wants to also say anything, is that in the western side, which is Saint Dominique, you start seeing the development with France being so invested that it became the richest colony in this side of the world as of now. All right, and Santo Domingo became one of the poorest because the Spanish went elsewhere and started investing elsewhere. All right, so I call it more colonies, more problems. And eventually, when the Haitian Revolution and the French Revolution, at this time, it started taking a big part into what's happening in the entire island. And one of the main treaties that happened at this time was the Treaty of Basel, which was in 1795. And if people know what was going on in this treaty and what was going on in the island, it was very different what happened in this treaty. In the island, the former slaves, anybody of African descent, and the Africans, they rebelled. All right, even though on paper the eastern side becomes what? France. It becomes a whole entire island becomes French, but French was typically losing the western side. All right, and the slaves from the western side saw this as, hey, we want to free. We don't want to see slavery in this. I live in New York. I don't know if you guys hear that. Bronx. So in the western side, the slaves they wanted to end slavery. So with that being said, if they saw slavery on the eastern side, you think they're gonna? It's not. There was no political lines. They saw people enslaved, so they also helped out in the eastern side. Remember, it became a whole colony for the French at this time. Okay, so by 1804, January 1st, the Haitians, they got their independence. The eastern side it was now a French colony. Okay. Before I keep going, does anybody have any questions? Let me check the chat. I feel like I'm just yapping away. Okay. All right. So with the secession of the French in the rule of the Dominican Republic was in a limbo. Spanish Boba started happening, where just a lot of different leaders started taking place. All right, and one of the things that happens was that even though it was short-lived, the Republic of Spanish Haiti was developed. Okay, do you guys remember that from the book? No? I'm flying in a few years.
Yes.
Say that again, Remy. You said it was what did you say? What was the last part?
So so eventually it was very short-lived. It was only for 3 months. And then it goes into the Republic of Spanish Haiti. And the Republic of Spanish Haiti did not have any real manpower, because Cáceres, he was he was the president of that short-lived republic. He had different ideas of what this side of the eastern side was supposed to be, but the main goal of Haiti on the western side is they wanted to eliminate slavery, and also they knew they had to repay a loan. So eventually we go into the connection between both the Haitian invasion that comes in 1822 to 1844. All right, and we're gonna get into that in the next slide. But does anybody want to say anything? I feel like I'm just lecturing and I wanted to make. Háblenme. Es un coro.
So the Treaty of Basel,
mm-hmm.
that so France and Spain, they're fighting each other in Europe.
Yep.
Spain loses, the whole island goes to France.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Spanish were still chilling out in Spanish Haiti, right?
No, so it hasn't become Spanish Haiti just yet. It's still Santo Domingo, but it's just they move into like a gray area. So just to simplify things, it just becomes a gray area. Remember, and for 100 years, the eastern side. This is where when we talk about, when I said, what do you think about Dominicans? When you think about, and a lot of people say entrepreneurship, they think about people que se lo buscan, right? It's because the Spanish crown was sent elsewhere, and these people in the Dominican, los criollos, had to figure out how they're going to trade, how they're going to eat, how they're going to fish, how they're going to eat. And for 100 years, they developed into their own type of subculture. All right. And I think that's what you start seeing with identity. Identity started changing in the eastern side. Okay. Does that this is where
that section was a little bit where my confusion started in the book. So
no, this is and then you start seeing at this time it's a lot of things going on in Santo Domingo, right? Mm-hmm. You started seeing the British as well take a stake. So everybody wanted to take a stake in the Dominican Republic at one time. And then we're going to get into the politics that starts developing when they are trying to, between 1822 to 1844, when that happened, everybody, there were separation groups. And there are going to be different ways that Dominicans think about what they want for their future. But before I go there, does anybody have any questions, additional questions?
I have a question. Hi. So France, have you hit yet on the year or the 5 years that France owned DR entirely? Because that part I'm always confused about. It's like there was a moment where France, the whole island was theirs. Did you cover that yet?
Yeah, so that's the Treaty of Basel. Officially made it entire. French colony.
That was the only time it didn't happen again?
It happened later on. Later on, we're going to talk about the separations. So the separations when they want to get rid of, when the Dominicans say, hey, we don't want to be part of this whole island of this Haitian invasion in 1822 and 1844, you're going to start seeing different separation groups. And you're going to start seeing President Baez pushing for that. Pero let me get into that. But
they didn't really get to set up shop, right? Because I guess then that went over my head when reading, because I didn't really think they got the opportunity to really take over, which is why they continued even years later. So because of the Haitian Revolution, they didn't really get to set up shop in DR, and I'm talking about like France. Okay, cool. I just wanted to be clear on that. Okay.
And I think that's that's where people get a lot of, and I'm glad that you mentioned that, because when Haiti invades the Dominican Republic, this is where like the Dominican nationalists, I know I'm gonna get like some DMs like, yo, eres tú hablando, is that when they came in, it was a gray area. And if Haiti defeated the French and they did not want, so it's gonna go into my question. And if you were a Black Dominican being enslaved, and now you're seeing people that look like you on horses, cutting, that are free, how do you think you felt if you were enslaved? And the Haitians on the Western side, they saw that these people are in need. So it just made it easy for Haiti to come in to the Eastern side. But before I get into that, I'm gonna go and explain that is my question. I like collaboration. So being an African slave in Santo Domingo, do you believe that they were for, or they celebrated the Haitian Revolution? Do you think they were in favor of it? So I just want you to imagine yourself. This is 1809, right? 1808. Haiti officially has their independence in 1804. All right. Black people in this side of the world, in this side of the other side, are free. They're riding horses. They're figuring it out. But you're in Santo Domingo, and there's still slavery, and you're over here cutting sugar canes.
I'm gonna jump in real quick. I think we had, if I remember correctly, because I feel like I read this a long time ago. I think we had both cases. So we had those that were more like, oh shit, these people are fighting and they're winning and they look like me, let's get busy, we can do this, we can win. And then you had the people that were like, yo, like, we don't have it as bad as y'all, or like learned like my kind of slavery, yeah, I'm enslaved, but it's kind of chill over here, because they weren't doing the kind of, or getting the kind of treatment, they weren't as brutalized as things were happening in Haiti. So I feel like, if I remember correctly, according to the book, there were both cases. There were the slaves that definitely just decided to ride and fight against any whites. Like, I think there was one that they talked about just went in and killed his master, killed like the whole family, killed whoever he can get his hands on. And then you have the ones that were just kind of like cool with, like, just chill and didn't mind. I don't know though.
I love that you mentioned that. So put yourself at this time. So, and that's true, because slavery was a lot less intense in the Dominican Republic. There's even it's not in this book, it's another book called The Dominican People by Inoa Saga, where and this is before the Haitian Revolution happens, a French settler went to the eastern side and said, hey, these guys are drinking outside where their horses with slaves. And they started making fun of the Spanish Criollo because they're drinking liquor and on horses with their slaves. And so, some Dominican, if you were Black in some parts of the Dominican Republic, it wasn't as harsh. But there were many parts in the Dominican Republic where it's harsh, where you're like, nah, this is not, because there was a lot of rebel groups. There were a lot of the South, San Cristobal, Nagua, Anigua, they were not having it. And if you were a slave at this time, so I'm talking about in the slave part, even if it's hard or not, I mean, I'm pretty sure nobody wants to be a slave. Do you think if you saw the new Haitian leader, Toussaint, you saw Dessalines passing by on a horse, what you're gonna be like? You're gonna be like, oh, I want to roll with him, or you're gonna be like, nah, I'd rather stay here and just cut some more sugar cane. Let me chill out.
I have something to add here. I the book also mentioned that the country, the Spanish side of the country, was divided into 3 different ideologies, if you will, right? Like the pro-Haitian, pro-Colombian, and pro-Hispanic, right? When all this is going on. I also want to bring up to the point that you were making is that there was a shortage of women, and the Spanish church was not as strict about the intermingling of races. Therefore, that's perhaps where that sentiment of slavery is not that bad. A lot of the women figure out that if they were sleeping with the Spaniards, that was a way to have an easier life, have freedom, and free their children. So I think that, you know, all of that tainted or painted a picture of slavery in the Dominican Republic that was different than that of Haiti.
Yeah. No, and that's
And
like,
also
Santana, that was excellent. Oh, no, go. I'm sorry.
And also, just the whole plantation versus cattle raising, like it's again just a different beast. It was just a different beast. But going back to your question, Remy, I would say I would join them. I would join the people on the horse. They would join the people on the horse. They wouldn't just stay cutting sugarcane. I think that's what you were asking, right?
Yeah, I mean, but of course, what Santana mentioned, that there were many, and that's where you start seeing the distinction. And I'm glad that you mentioned those when we talk about the separatist groups. You said 3, but it's actually 4, and there's one that you didn't mention that it becomes the super popular one. Forefathers come from, and they
the mulattos.
Eso no hicieron casi nada. Like seriously, that was my biggest surprise. Duarte Sanchez Mella. That was my biggest surprise in this book.
No, but we're going through the book.
I love how you just raised it up slowly.
I feel like
I can't wait for us to get there.
Yeah, so we're gonna get there. That's what, but I wanted to just point out some Black liberation groups that were at this time. So you have the Cimarrones that developed. These were free slaves, mostly from Senegal. That's why they were like, the Spanish eventually were like, and this is like external, did not want to take slaves from Ghana and Senegal because they were like, you know what, these guys are a little bit too crazy. Let's get our slaves elsewhere. Because they were going into the mountains, Salcedo, and they were setting up shop in different parts. But this is all amazing. I love the collaboration, but we're gonna get into what Santana was going into. So I like to call this slide and this time period. It's not you, it's me. Because I see the unification of the Española and the merger, and it's an idea. It seems like a good idea. Independence. Black leaders, yada, yada, yada. But then this side, it kind of didn't work. And there were many reasons why it didn't work. And even though I do like what Haiti was bringing to the table, even though it's like, hey, we could struggle now and we'll be totally free later. But it's like a relationship, right? I don't know if you ever moved in, you ever got in a relationship like, wow, I really like this person, she's wonderful, or he or she's wonderful. And then you're like, wow, this can really go the distance. And then you notice that finances, Haiti owed a lot of money. All right. If you've been free, you never owed any money. Now you come together, and now they're making you work. This is hard. And we got to think about those Black folks, those. Ese niño está, I guess he's enjoying the class. So if you were one of those people of color that you didn't and they were like mixed Blacks, that they didn't have that difficulty, they didn't see why I have to work so hard, because Haiti's perception of working hard and making money was about, you got to work 12 hours a day, you got to work, and we're going to pay off this loan. When you're like, hey, that's your loan, that's not mine. And coming together, even though in theory, coming together, let's put one language, let's build one thing. It was already 100 years the Dominicans have developed their own culture. So, and they were like very proud of who they were, that later on you start seeing that clash even with the Spanish, So it didn't work for many reasons, and one of the reasons is that what was the president's name?
Santana?
No.
No, that was Baez.
No, we haven't even gotten to the Dominican independence just yet.
Not bad.
Bourdieu. So Bourdieu, he was a big, he was a leader in the Haitian rebellion and revolution. He was he was well respected in Haiti. Even though in Haiti they started he unified Haiti after Dessalines because they had a lot of issues, and then he was able to unify that part and then unify the whole entire island. So he was in power for 22 years, in the only time of this whole entire island. And one of the things is that he wanted to implement one language. That didn't sit right with many of the Dominicans. Many Dominicans that were raised in the church, just like Santana mentioned, is that they were even though you were Black or or mixed, things of that nature, they took religion very, very seriously. So now they cut, if you was going to church 5 times or 7 times a week, now they cut it off to 2 times a week because you have to work. It's mandatory. Everybody has to work because they have to pay off this loan, right? Remember, slavery in many parts of the Dominican Republic, yes, it was laxed. Many parts it wasn't, right? And that's where you start seeing the division in different separatist groups and people scheming like, hey, maybe we should be pro-Spanish because we want to speak Spanish. We have our own customs. We, believe it or not, rooster fighting was a big thing. I think they mentioned in, I don't have my book open right now, but they mentioned that rooster fighting, they eliminated rooster fighting. For many people, even to this day, you go to the campos, to the rural areas, you tell them they can't do rooster fighting, they'll be like, hey, get out of my face, So the Dominican subculture, the culture, it was being eliminated and they felt a certain way. So now you start thinking, about independence, total independence. So that's where you have Latinitarios start organizing. But you also have folks. Yeah, let me just say this, the 4 groups, and then we can talk about that. Then you start seeing people that say, hey, they feel that they can be free by themselves, sustaining, battling the invaders and foreign folks, and that doesn't just Haiti. That was a number of other folks that were coming in, and they would say, hey, can we reconnect with the Spanish? So there were some people that wanted to reconnect with the Spanish, and there were certain people that wanted to separate themselves, but also they were reaching out to the British, but the British was like, we're not interested. We got other colonies. We're straight here, And then you have the pro-French group that say, hey, France, even though you have to think about demographics, there's a lot of different demographics. People knew that France coming back entailed slavery, all right? And that didn't sit right with certain people as well. No, not yet. I'll get into that, Kayla. So just going into the separatist group, I know that Maciel had something to say.
I don't know if you could just stop me if we're not here yet, but it's sounding like we are. That this whole period that I was reading, in all honesty, was just so wild to me because I think a lot of what Boyel did was like fire. Like I was with it, the unification of the island. I was like, everyone was progressing, everyone was moving forward. But then they started implementing these laws that I thought were like insane. This whole idea, if like it was illegal to speak Spanish, you either adopted the flag or you had to leave or you were murdered. Or there was, like you said, the cutting down of like the churches. It was literally everything that already had, like you mentioned the perfect word would be identity. They were just like erasing that. And I really had a problem with it. And I remember that's why I reached out to you to speak more about that, because from my understanding, I never learned about this little, everything that happened under that section that happened under Boyel. So this is kind of where now I'm seeing, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, if that is why, if that's also part of like why Dominicans today feel or have this notion of like Haitians want DR, or they want to take this from us, or they want to like wipe our identity out now. Like, is that where the fear stems from? Is this what was passed down? Like, is there a connection? And if this is too way off, then we can definitely touch it another time, because I know we're pressed for time. Yeah, I'll like email you or whatever. But yeah, I'm interested in that, bro, because I'm like, oh, okay, now I understand why, you know, in all honesty, my family is like so passionate about this shit, about this like separation and this hatred, and like, what's up?
Yeah. Yeah, it's yeah, because I know my grandfather talks about it like he was there, like in 1844, and I'm like, you wasn't there. Yeah, but no, they know even further than that. When Dessalines started, he's trying to get rid of the Spanish and the French colonizers, but it does have a correlation. And one of the correlations is that, yeah, so look, in theory, what Haiti was trying to do there, I think it was, look, Haiti did a lot of good things that people don't want to highlight in terms of, you know, having a free Black and independence. Like, people talk about entrepreneurship all the time, right? But then you'd be like, oh no, you know, I'm gonna be broke for a few years, I can't. So at this time, they're like, hey, we could work on this and keep building. But the thing is, Haiti had a lot of baggage. A lot of the baggage was they had a loan, they had they had an embargo on them with the French and the Americans, you know, and a lot of European countries, they put that on them. They didn't want Haiti to succeed, you know, and you know, you being tied up to that, it kind of it played a big part in their relationship. And then Haiti is saying, hey, let's become one. Us becoming one, we'll get stronger. But the thing is that in those 100 years that the Dominican Republic was by themselves, the Criollos, there was a lot of mixing, and this is developed of this own culture.
And
that
problem with that is with them saying, let's become one, which I'm cool with, but you're saying, let's become one, let's become more, let's become you. Yeah. So like, why can't we become one and everybody kind of do their thing? Yeah. When we've all established, like you said, in these 100 years, Haiti has already developed their identity. We've already developed our identity. It's like, let's stay united and pushing forward. I just think it's wow, all this extra stuff that was going on. Like, I really feel for those that had to the Dominicans that had to kind of go and live under this, because we literally just broke free from this. This is what these people were doing to us, and now you're doing it to us. Or
oh, ¿qué le pasó? I did not mute her, by the way.
Marcia, you went mute.
Yeah, she went mute, but
I finished. I mute myself.
Oh, okay. I see Rodriguez and I see Abe that want to indicate something. So Rodriguez, go ahead.
I hope you guys can hear me okay. I just thought that like a lot of the way that I process this is that like Haiti kind of liberated itself, but still sort of took on this sort of like the same political structure that the colonists had in place. So then they have that same kind of level of like, even though they did liberate a lot of like all Black people on the island, they still went into DR kind of trying to with that same kind of like colonist mindset of just like our culture over yours, and kind of like not willing to collaborate. So that's all I wanted to, like, how I wanted to process that. I'm wondering if like what they could have done differently in that respect.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's you know, and I look, I agree with what you're saying. You know what? Before I say anything, Abe wants to, and he's there waiting. Abe.
Yeah, I'll be really brief. But like the way that I kind of process it and like thinking about this is, you know, like whenever there's something like this, like a liberation or a coup or, you know, any kind of like violent political instability, the situation is so like fragile that whoever's in power is afraid that things will be disrupted again, right? Because it's not unusual in a lot of these situations for there to be like another counter coup or another like separatist movement. So I think a lot of times those kind of oppressive tactics, so to speak, are like ways of suppressing any potential dissent that might be left, that might lead to like more violence and another enemy against like this united government that is created.
Yeah, no,
This is why people have to plan for like the post coup. I feel like people just go like, cool, we got it and it's gonna be great. And no one ever is like, no, we have to plan for what's gonna happen after and make
well, but remember there was some people from the African descent that were for it. So one of the things about that Haiti brought to the Dominican Republic side is a lot of new laws on the land. All right. So when you think about laws on the land, so it depends on what perspective you're taking, because if you were an elite and you got 10 properties, so and you think about this like Cuba. All right. If you're an elite, you have 10 properties, but then and then the other side, you was a slave, you never had nothing. And now the country, because one of the laws that they put out is that everybody gets a piece of land. Everybody. If you got 10, you're gonna keep one, and the other 9 is gonna go to people you probably enslaved or people you had this and that. So people if you gave somebody a home or a piece of land, they were some of those Afro-Dominicans, or you're gonna be like, oh, I love it here. This guy's my guy. I'm not cutting sugar canes no more, and I'm living, I got my own, I don't have to live in a shack. I love it here. But if you were so sometimes in Latinitaria, there are a lot of landowners. They're like, hey, we got to get our land back. We got to get these deeds. We don't respect what they're doing here. Plus, they're getting rid of the culture, and that there was a lot of clash. And that's why to this day, even more than 200 years, there's a lot of discrepancy. Where do people sit? Where what do you think? And then people still talk. I know if you talk to you and your grandparents, they think that they talk like they were there. And I tell my grandfather, you wasn't there. You don't even know anything that happened there. So just to move it forward, because it's already 8:30. It's so 4 different separatist groups developed. All right, during 1822 and 1844, clearly on paper they have potential. They're like, wow, this can really work. But it's like a relationship. It looks good from the outside, but internally it wasn't working out because both sides wanted different things. Okay. And 4 groups developed, and one of them was the pro-Spanish that wanted to do with Spanish, like I mentioned, the separatist group that was reaching out to the UK, the Great Britain, pro-France, they wanted to collaborate with the French, which the Haitians, they were like, that's not gonna happen, not the French. How are you gonna call on the biggest enemy we have, and we owe them money, right? So they were not gonna let that happen. And Latinitaria, which what people call them Latinitarios, it was a group that they said, hey, we can have self-independence. Self-independence, not under anyone. All right, that's something that was that was another way of thinking. And they have a number. Who were the main leaders? There was a lot of people part of the Latinitaria, but who are the 3 main leaders that get credited?
Duarte, Sanchez, y Mella.
Yes, así mismo. Even though Santana, she was like, they didn't do nothing.
Right.
Pero Latinitario, they gave that idea, the ideology, el pensamiento para comenzar la República Dominicana, to start the Dominican Republic. And that's major. It's like when you think about Cuba, Jose Marti. He didn't really, people were like, oh, he didn't do nothing. But he had the idea to change the way people thought of the country. Really went a long way. Okay. And you have to really organize. You have to really organize to really mobilize these people. It's not that they send an email and they say, hey guys, let's meet tomorrow over here. They had to really sell it to everybody, and people started seeing that we can really do this. And in February, February 1844, there was a shift in the Haitian government. All right, and there was in the politics in Haiti started becoming very rocky, and they saw that this is the perfect time. So that the Little Trinitario, they came together with the Santana brothers, which is Pedro Santana and Ramon Santana. Pedro Santana being a military strategist, military leader, genius, but they saw him at this time. He mobilized his army, and they went for independence. I know that Princess wanted to say something. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I was confused on the difference between the Trinitarios and the Separatists.
Yeah, so the separatist group, the Trinitario they were the only group that wanted total independence. All right, they said, oh, Haiti has total independence, but they got money problems, and they don't want us to be Dominican. Trinitario was sort of like that, but they want to be Dominican. They wanted to put Dominican culture to the top, and they wanted to have their own independence, not nobody, not with Spain, not with France, not with anybody. They wanted total independence. And that's what made them different.
So the Trinitarios wanted Dominican identity, but the Separatists were just like...
They wanted to separate themselves, but they were reaching out. They were reaching out to get the British. They wanted the UK. The UK did not want. They really wasn't really for them. They were like, you guys have a lot of problems in that island. We're over here. We're nice over here. So, separatist groups. They have 4 different separatist groups, and as we all know today, the Trinitarios were the ones that really mobilized and moved the things forward. Yeah, they also reached out to Spanish, France and Spain, but that's later on. So I wanted to, the book is 500 pages, all right? And, and I like collaboration, pero, I know that I was not gonna be able to finish the entire book today. So I wanted to get at least to the independence. So remember, the Trinitarios were able to come together, mobilize with the Santana brothers and seek a perfect opportunity to march and get into the Dominican Republic and form the Dominican nation, which is also on February 27th, 1844. Even though that's halfway to the book, if we're gonna get all the way to 1999, which is in the book, I don't think we will be here till midnight, and that's not gonna happen today, guys. But we could discuss anything else in the book, and you can, because we're not gonna get into the Trujillo era, but I wanted to take at least 10, 15 more minutes of any section in the book that you guys thought it was interesting. We can, discuss, and then we'll segue into the next book club, which is gonna be a special treat that me and Andrew are working on.
I do have a question for this part, right? And I'm going to bring up recent events on our independence, right? Of course, that we couldn't miss that part. Because is it a separation? Is it independence? I mean, the way the book describes it is a separation from Haiti. And it is such, as a Dominican, it is so confusing to figure out what this means. ¿Qué significa el 27 de febrero? And what is the most historically accurate way for us to accept the date and to dimensionalize and explain what this means?
Before I say my remarks, what do you guys take from the book or historical context? I
kind of sort of related to that. I felt like the way that this book read, it was like up until these like different movements, we were kind of like, okay, yeah, the Spanish crown was this, and this was here, and I felt like when it started talking about separation from Haiti, the narrative kind of switched to being like, oh, Haiti is a sort of oppressive force from which we should be liberated, and then like the rest of the book's narrative felt like it was just the dudes who were on the top, like all the Trinitarios and stuff like that, like these big elite guys. And I feel like that really sets the tone for that sort of like you know, anti-Haitian attitude. And I feel like a lot of it came from not wanting to give benefit to most people outside of like the landowners. And I feel like I would have liked to see more of regular Joe Schmo history as well.
I feel there was a lot of Joe Schmo. I feel that they separated themselves. But you know what? Anybody else wants to say something before I see?
I didn't get that. I didn't get too far, so that could be why I it's a bit mixed because I only got to chapter 11.
This is the part. Actually, that's a Santana always asking me. I just met her today.
You can count on me.
She asked me very controversial. You know how that Beehive has, they go attack your social media. This is the question, all right? Because some people feel that after the restoration period, since that was the next slide, but I'm not going to be able to finish. The restoration period, people see that as like the real war of independence, right? Like real, Afrocentric, whatever.
I doubt people dying.
Like that, some people see that as the real one because everybody came together to fight against Spain, and that.
I felt like that too.
Yeah, so people felt like that's the one, and that's where Hopefuls comes in from Puerto Rico, puts the idea like, hey, we could definitely defeat the Spanish, and you have Luperón, as the general, and he sets them. And this becomes a domino effect where they later on they go to Puerto Rico, they Grito de Lara, and then later on then they go to a few years later they go to Cuba and do the 10 Years War, and this is how they start defeating the Spanish, right? This is outside of the book, but in Dominican nationalism, February 27th is the independence. So we're sticking to the book today, guys. And so in February 27th, they marched and they seek the right opportunity. Remember, like I said, Boyer started having issues with the Haitians in the West, and there was a new leader coming in trying to take him down. So while the Dominicans were trying to separate themselves, they were in Haiti, they were having their own internal problems where they were trying to take him down. So Boyer was in a tight spot, and the Dominicans saw that, Pedro Santana saw that, the Trinitarios saw that, and they got in there. Even though the Trinitario story was very short-lived, because what happens to the Trinitarios?
They got exiled and eventually murdered on the 27th the following year, which is so crazy. It's so how none of that is mentioned. It's so crazy.
Why? Who did this?
Because he wanted, oh my God, why am I blinking? Duarte wanted to replace Santana. He wanted the military to have control. If I'm not mistaken, that's what I remember, him being part of the military as a general. Well, because Santana, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry.
No, trust me, go ahead, because I read this a while ago.
Yo hablo mucho. No, go ahead.
Because Santana wanted to do what you were saying before. He was reaching out to all these other places and he wanted to collaborate. Well, collaborate is a nice way to put it, but he wanted to go back in business and ask for help and get all this stuff. And the Trinitarios were like, nah. And they started making noise again and saying like, this is what they're doing. So they separated them, sent them to different countries, and their families were trying to get them back within that year. And they ended up killing them on the 27th the following year after the first celebration of independence.
Yeah, and everybody has a different narrative in terms of, there's a lot of Trinidad members, all right? So everybody has a different fate, all right? Because, Sanchez had a different fate, Mella had a different fate, which Mella ended up living a little longer than most of them. But, Juan Pablo Duarte, yes, he was exiled. The idea of independence, it came from the Trinitarios, and this is why they are so honored. All right, so the Dominican Republic, that idea of the Dominican Republic, it probably wouldn't exist because they would have been another. What if they would have reconnected with the French? It would have been another name, or if they would have connected with the This is why I don't separate myself with the other West Indian countries, because remember, Jamaica was a Spanish colony at one time, or the Trinidad was a Spanish colony, but they just changed different colonizers. And this is what's going on a lot in the Dominican Republic. So what happened after that? Yeah, Pedro Santana betrayed, and the Dominican Republic becomes one of, you know, the only few countries that get rid of the colonizer and then brings them back. And it's you know, and then the novela continues, and then you go into the Restoration War, where there's a real battle of everybody coming, all the social classes, all the races, even Haiti helps supplies with guns, and that battle, the Luperón was the general. They win that battle, and they have full independence, and then they start, you know, a whole new era with the blue and red parties. Pero since we're up at time, and I think I'm glad that you guys enjoyed the book, even though this book was more to set the foundation for the next two books. I just wanted to make sure that we understood a little bit of like the timeline, and I wanted to get into the independence, since it's something that's always has a lot of controversy, and it still does, because people people look at history in their own eyes. And remember, it's always, when you read a book, you also have to look at who wrote it, because sometimes, you know, the elites or anybody that's in power, they have their own narrative. But a lot of the good thing about the Dominican Writers Association, they're doing so much great work highlighting different books. And one of the things that I want to highlight for the next few books, either it's going to be the next one or the book after, I want to highlight Carlos Cook's.
Yes. Sorry, you just got me so excited.
I don't know who said that, but I'm glad you are.
It was Princesa. I'm sorry. I'm like in the middle of reading that.
So I want to be able to talk about just the Black identity and just to get a further understanding. So
wait, did Princesa say that she's reading the book?
I am.
Of Carlos Cook?
Who is this? Yeah.
We trying to get a copy and we can't find it anywhere.
I have a PDF that I found.
So
I have a copy. I
found it
of the book on a PDF off of Twitter files. It's a bit of a dodgy copy. Like the first half is the book, and then the second half is like a bunch of other scans from I don't know what. I haven't really looked, but I could send it if you want it.
Yes, please. Remy and I are like all over the place looking for this book.
Yes.
I found it on a link in Twitter, so
because it's out of
it was hard to find.
Yeah, it's very hard to find, and that's why I talk about, there's certain writings that are hitting, and there's certain things that we want to highlight and learn from. Like Carlos Cook's was, he's from Harlem, Dominican, but he was with Marcus Garvey, doing a lot of great work. And his, when you think about Marcus Garvey, you don't think of Dominican being his right hand and getting, it's just doing so much great work.
He was like the ideological connection from Marcus Garvey to Malcolm X. I think like his story, like from what I've read so far, there was some bits where I felt like he was a bit lacking in like connecting a lot of stuff, or I felt like he could have done with learning a bit more about different countries and different histories. But he says some good points regardless. Yeah.
So I see, so I know that, so we're gonna connect with some of you guys in the future, because that's the next book I wanna incorporate. And it's not as, this is like a textbook. So I wanna be able to, we're gonna extend more time, and we wanna be able to finish the next book. I wanted to make sure it's something that we can all relate as New Yorkers as well. Alexander, we're gonna reach out to you because we're hearing that you have some connections where we've been going everywhere trying to get this book. Because,
what's the title of the book?
We have a number of the Black nationalism from Marcus Garvey to Malcolm X. That's what one of the books that title. And then we have there's others, but I'm gonna email you. I think I have you on Instagram.
Yeah, I could send you the email, or I could just put it here and anyone can email me, to be honest. But Yeah, I just give me the titles, because yeah, if it's a primary book from Cooks, then that'll be helpful. If it's like a secondary source, like it's a scholarly source, I could try to find that. The two sites that I use that can be helpful is called archive.org. That's one of them. So
Okay.
listed there. And then another one is Library Genesis, and the URL's here. I mean, I don't mind searching for it. This is half of what I do with my life, but point being is that yeah, just send me the titles and I'll do my best to find them, and then send them to whoever will upload them.
Perfect.
Yeah.
We're over here sitting with the plug, so this is great. So I'm gonna email you, and I'm gonna look through this as well.
Awesome.
But
So wait, where's this? Can I ask real quick? Where is this? Like, I guess going. The fact that we about to read Marcus Garvey. Like, what's the plan now? Because I thought we were doing like Dominican stuff.
It's a Dominican writer that we're gonna put you on. So we're gonna talk about that for the next.
Carlos Cooks was a Dominican activist that worked with Marcus.
Oh, it's not written by Marcus Garvey. It's a book on Marcus Garvey by Carlos Cook. Oh, okay.
He talks about Black nationalism and how this connects to the culture and how it connects also with Dominicans. So we're gonna do our research, and every quarter we try to have a new book, and so just stay tuned. I appreciate everybody that's on the call today. You can always email me. Let me put my email here.
You want that?
You're gonna get inundated. Oh no.
It's okay. It's okay.
Remy, about to email you like 10 questions. Don't drop that email, kid.
Yeah. I got a special email.
Let me copy this email.
I got a special email for my, for certain.
Para lo que joden, a special email.
I'm heavy on the block, But no, cualquier cosa, I always like to hear from everybody. I like the collaboration, and I hope to see, hopefully in the next book, is something that everybody will like as well. So vamos a seguir para adelante, and cualquier cosa, you can always email me, me pueden en el correo, and that's it. Does anybody have any?
Remy, are you gonna host a second part to tonight? Did you finish?
We did not get to finish because we only got to 1844, and it goes all the way to 1999.
I totally vote for part 2.
You don't.
I do too, so I could catch up.
I want to vote for a part 2 too.
Tenemos que hablar de Trujillo.
Tenemos que hablar exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Like,
I wanted to say that I want to vote for that because there's like no way we skip over that. Like he did so much.
That's the reason in that last discussion you guys want to talk about any other thing. But you know what? Since the people have spoken, we're gonna do that. And especially my semester just ended. I gotta finish grading tonight.
Time now.
Huh? I got some time.
Do a 3-hour discussion.
Oh, that'd be nice. We'll bring some wine. We'll bring some popcorn.
We gotta talk about the Haitian massacre. Like, we gotta get into so much stuff.
Right.
Immigration to like the U.S. Like we could we'll start studying family history.
Them letting in the Jewish people. Like,
these students aren't failing.
No, I love it. And we have so much of our culture, like San Pedro de Macorís, a lot of West Indian culture. Then you have what the Jewish people put into the culture. So one thing that I learned, I heard, this is a rumor that the salchichon was kosher meat. And that came from the Jewish people. I don't know, I'm reading on, I like to do my background thing. Don't hold me to that, but I think it's just so cool that we have so many, our culture is so tied into, just a mixture of a lot of cultures. So we'll figure it out. Andrew, we'll talk about this a part 2 within like 2 or 3 weeks.
So maybe in like 2 or 3 weeks, guys.
Yeah, we can do that. It's already written. We already read everything, so all I just gotta do is just.
Bueno, there's some people here who didn't finish.
Sure.
Or haven't even started. So you guys are gonna have like an extra 2 to 3 weeks to catch up.
Yeah.
I just came onto this. This is the first time I've been with the group, and so I just ordered the book, so I got a lot of reading to do.
Oh, thank you. See,
I love
Have a clip note to this book?
I mean, we can you know what, we're gonna give some people some time, and then we, you know, we'll regroup in a month, and then we'll put in the new book within that time. And
For July, we could put the new Carlos book.
And then we could just keep it going. But guys, I gotta grade papers before my department kills me. I got a lot of students begging me right now. Can I get an A? And they have no reasoning to ask me for an A today. So
I mean, after this book, let them have an A. This book is tough. Let them get that A.
they have 3 books this semester.
This is crazy.
Pero no, cualquier cosa, we're gonna, and just me and Angie will come back for a part 2, and then in the summer we'll come up with the next one. Cool.
Very cool.
All
This
right,
was awesome, guys. Really dope.
This was great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
good night. See you next time.
Great,
Remember
bye.
to subscribe so you get the announcements.
Thank you guys for having this. Appreciate y'all.
You're welcome.
Alexander, we can continue meeting.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate this. Have a good night, mi gente.
No joda.
Bye, everybody.
Good night.
Este es un mandado, para allá voy ahora.
Santana, what part of the year are you from?
Yo soy de Santo Domingo. Vine cuando tenía 10 años. Viví en el Bronx.
In the Bronx? No, my whole family. You remind me of my mom. My mom is a Santana, but you remind me of her.
¿De dónde? ¿De dónde son?
Well, we're from the capital, but they originate from Hato Mayor.
Okay, so it's close because mi Santana viene de San Juan, de las Matas de Farfán.
Yeah.
That's where my Santana side of the family is from.
I know my grandfather had 30, he's 33 out of 36.
Okay, so mine is, my father is one of 35. But back then, okay, I learned this in the book, Trujillo incentivized.
35 kids?
Yeah, but that wasn't that old.
Yeah,
but he incentivized.
No, mi abuela parió 24, no mellizos, y le crió algunos de los 11 más que tuvo mi abuelo.
Yo le gané con uno. My grandfather's number 33 out of 36.
Your grandmother needs to write a book.
Maybe we are related because, you know, maybe they left out one, because my grandfather always, when we meet people, he was kicked out of his Santana side because he married a Morena. And they were not happy about that. And so he had to move to la capital from Hato Mayor.
35 kids.
Yeah. I always say, like, I have 3, and I said if my grandma could do this 24 times, I could do this 3 times.
No, los tiempos son diferentes, ya.
But that's it, bro.
No te pegues de ahí, no.
And you're not gonna get a check, I guess. Because Trujillo.
No. Los abuelos de nosotros tenían finca. They had their rice and their animals y todo eso ahí.
Yeah.
They were
Trujillo le daba algo.
Los muchachos andaban solos, se criaban solos. Ya es muy diferente la cosa, no es como ahí, ¿no? Ay, no. Yo tengo uno y me lo encuentro mucho a veces.
I don't even have any kids, and I find that was a lot.
Yo llamo a los abuelos y dije, pero ¿y cuándo vienen los abuelos de estos muchachos a buscarlo? Que no puedo más.
Oh,
so I'm about to dip. Better you guys be safe.
Thank you so much. This was great.
Likewise, and you know, talk to Angie. Angie's the mastermind of everything.
Yeah, don't call me because I'm on another Zoom.
Okay.
Text me.
All right. Later. Bye. And Jensen, thank you. Peace. Bye-bye.